Welcome into Off the Hook Sports. I am Caleb Calhoun on a Friday. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you. Dave is off today, so it's just us, just me getting rolling with you guys. We've got a lot to cover today. We're going to talk about Vols invited to the NFL Combine. There have been 6 of them. It's kind of interesting who was invited and who wasn't. Some of them we already knew, but now they're confirmed. Urban Meyer calling the Vols a national championship dark horse team. But don't get excited because I have a conspiracy theory on that. College football playoff seeding is apparently not going to change, according to people close with the program. We're going to talk about the ramifications for that coming up. We're also going to discuss the Lady Vols beating Auburn. Saturday's Alabama-Auburn 1-2 matchup in basketball is the first SEC men's basketball 1-2 matchup ever involving 2 SEC teams, that is. So we're going to talk about the history of that compared to other historic games in nature related to that. What beats it? Because this is pretty historic, including how does this compare to other Iron Bowl matchups in football? I mean, this is a very big deal. And we're also going to talk about Tennessee basketball getting set to face Vanderbilt over the weekend. What do the Vols need to do to win that game? So please hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn the notifications on. We're building something great here at Off the Hook Sports, and as always, we want you to be a part of it, so remember to do all of those things. The show is brought to you from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. Let's get started with today's tough question. And today's tough question is brought to you by Banks & Jones. Tennessee's trial attorneys, play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. www.banksandjones.com. Urban Meyer, out of the blue, called the Tennessee Vols, I kid you not, a dark horse national title contender. This happened yesterday. It's Urban Meyer, as for all of those of you who know, was at Ohio State for a significant period of time. Ohio State obviously beat Tennessee in the college football playoff last year before Ohio State, where he won a national title, I think his 3rd year on the job. He was with the Florida Gators for 6 years, and he won 2 national titles and went 6-0 against Tennessee. So Urban Meyer believes in Tennessee, but has a history of pretty much owning Tennessee. It was on an episode of the Triple Option podcast with Rob Stone and Mark Ingram. And it was a look ahead to the 2025 season. He was asked about his top dark horse candidates to potentially win the college football playoff national championship. Rather than pick Florida or Ohio State, he went straight to Tennessee. And here's his quote. Nico Iamaleava, the quarterback at Tennessee. I remember when I first started studying him last year, and I called Brady Quinn and Matt Leinart and said, what am I missing here? This guy looks like a bona fide. He looks like Aaron Rodgers. The ball comes out of his hands like a tennis ball. Yes, he compared Nico Iamaleava to Aaron Rodgers. And then he said later, he got really inconsistent, and that team around him got a little inconsistent, and they still had a heck of a year. If that kid grows as a quarterback, I asked the question after watching, and I know he wasn't playing great teams, but just his physical ability, size, speed, and athleticism, the way the ball comes out, I saw him as a high first-round pick. Now, it remains to be seen, but I'll pick Tennessee when talking about Tennessee as a dark horse national title contender. So here's today's tough question, and I'm going to set it up as the poll question. Why did Urban Meyer call Tennessee a dark horse? No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to phrase it like this. I'm going to phrase it this way. Is Urban Meyer gunning for Josh Heupel's job? Yes, that's the question. And the reason I say that is because I think Urban Meyer is the biggest snake in the business. I think he's the biggest snake in the business. And everything he says is to potentially benefit him long term. I thought he said this last year about Texas, that they should go win the national title. I felt like he was saying that because he was trying to put pressure on Steve Sarkisian, hoping that Texas may possibly get fired and he could take the job. I think he said some things about USC in the same way. He said some things about Ohio State just this past year. Urban Meyer, I think, wants to get back into college football coaching. I think when he props up teams, he puts expectations on them. So fan bases, administrators, athletic directors, and whoever he can add fuel to the fire of turning against those coaches if he would like to coach at that job. So today's tough question is, did Urban Meyer pick Tennessee as a dark horse national title contender because he wants to put pressure on Josh Heupel so he could take Josh Heupel's job eventually? I know that sounds crazy. I know that's insane, but the poll question is up. You guys give me your thoughts. I'm going to tell you, I think that's what he's doing here. He compared Nico Iamaleava to Aaron Rodgers. Now, look, I do superlatives all the time. I said Nico Iamaleava was created in a lab to run Josh Heupel's offense. It didn't look like that last year at times. His in-game performance just didn't look the same as what we saw in practice, what we saw in certain moments. I mean, he's got a beautiful touch on the ball. He's got all the physical tools. He just somehow had issues, it seemed like, putting it together. But Aaron Rodgers, you just throw that comparison around? I mean, that's crazy. Aaron Rodgers was so deadly accurate over the middle. Nico Iamaleava is the best passer over the middle Tennessee's had since Josh Heupel's been there. But I'm not going to say he's Aaron Rodgers over the middle. That's an insane thing to say. So I think, and again, it feels like Urban Meyer is just saying stuff to try to make sure that, to do his best to make sure that there's pressure on Josh Heupel if he wants to gun for the Tennessee job. Because I don't see any way how you could consider. I see how you can consider Tennessee a dark horse national title contender. I do. But I just don't put a lot of faith in Urban Meyer doing anything honest or above board. You guys give me your thoughts. Again, the poll question, is Urban Meyer gunning for Josh Heupel's job? We'll give you the results soon. Again, the show brought to you by Banks & Jones, T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott.
All right. So speaking still with things Urban Meyer said, he labeled a few other dark horse contenders too. I think he said Texas again. Guys, he said Texas because he also would like the Texas job. That would be the most desirable job for him. Texas is probably the best job in America, and it's a better job now given what happened. But when Urban Meyer picked his 3 national championship favorites, he went with Penn State as 1, Texas 2, and Ohio State as 3. I don't really think he's gunning for the Penn State job. That's not the best job to go for, quite honestly. But if anybody, that's not a bad job. I can see Urban Meyer gunning for it. He's gunning for the Texas job, clearly. So he would love to get the Texas job back. He named Ohio State because it's where he coached before, and it's just obvious, even though he probably can't get that job. I think the Texas job and the Tennessee job, naming those jobs, that was very meticulous by him because he's naming jobs he wants to get. He wants to put pressure on those people. So, sorry, 1 second. I apologize. Oh, I apologize for that, guys. He wants to name jobs where he can put pressure on certain people so he could potentially take those jobs. And that's the way Urban Meyer operates. You should never believe a word he says. He's the biggest liar in the history of head coaches in football. So that's where I land. Now, the poll question disagrees with me. Is Urban Meyer gunning for Josh Heupel's job? Only 27% say yes, 73% say no. Just to go to a couple of comments, Joe Vols 64 says Tennessee would never hire Urban. Well, Joe Vol, I agree with you, but that doesn't mean Urban wouldn't try to gun for this. Dylan said that Tennessee's had enough success recently to get a better coach than Urban after the Jags incident. No, I agree with you on all that, Dylan. I don't think Urban Meyer himself is marketable, but I think Urban Meyer is trying to make himself marketable and is gunning for certain jobs. So Adam says Urban doesn't want to coach at Tennessee. If anything, he's trying to use Tennessee to excite Florida. Well, I think he'd prefer to coach at Florida, but Adam, I can tell you right now, Florida is not calling him back. I think he would settle for Tennessee. That's not the top job he would want, but he would settle for Tennessee because I think he just would love to get back into coaching. Dylan says he'd call a guy like Cliff Kingsbury before Urban Meyer. It's an interesting take. And so I think, yes, Adam is right. If Urban wants to coach at your school, it means you have a great roster. Very true. Adam says he would do better at Auburn. I don't know if Urban Meyer wants to live in Auburn because I don't think anybody wants to live in Auburn. There, you guys can hate me. I said it. Nobody wants to live in Auburn. Portions of the program are brought to you by Chattanooga Mortgage. Congratulations, your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chat with 2tsmortgage.com, chatmortgage.com. My final take is either be excited about Tennessee or because Urban Meyer knows something that we don't, and maybe Nico really is that great and going to turn into something, or worry about, or don't worry, but just keep an eyebrow raised that Urban Meyer might be gunning for that job. I don't think Tennessee would ever hire him. That doesn't mean that Urban Meyer wouldn't gun for it. This dude is one of the biggest snakes and one of the biggest liars, and I try to tell you guys that in all of professional or college sports, okay? He is, I mean, look, it's funny that he dismissed Cam Newton from the team because Cam Newton also recently, from things he's been saying about the Panthers, is a liar too and a bit of a snake. So it's funny that they were on a team together, two peas in a pod. Urban Meyer hid behind Tim Tebow for 4 years to throw morality in your face while he was covering up for murders and stalking and every other horrific crime in the book you could think of with players on his team, and just rubbing everybody's nose in it that he was winning. So, I mean, again, never believe a word this dude says. Never believe anything he says is honest. Everything he says is calculating and meticulous. But maybe you could get excited about it. Maybe there's some merit to Urban Meyer saying that Tennessee is a national title contender. Maybe there's some merit to this guy who just, again, suspended a player for a half after he tried to blind somebody, covered up for a domestic abuser on his staff. Yeah, Urban Meyer's just a really faked a heart attack, faked a health condition because he wanted an excuse and pretext to retire because he was running from Florida because he knew that Nick Saban had built a program that was going to end his dynasty. Okay, I'm just saying, this guy is calculating on everything he does. He's one of the biggest frauds. So when he says Tennessee's his dark horse national title contender, I raise an eyebrow and say, well, maybe he is just saying this because he wants the Tennessee job. But maybe I'm overreacting. So, you guys can tell me. It's possible that I'm being a little unfair to him here, but I know his history, so I just refuse to actually believe a word that comes out of Urban Meyer's mouth. Portions of the program are brought to you by Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2ts.com, Hemp House Chat with 2ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. That's HOOKED for 10% off. All right, moving on. Let's go to the NFL Combine. Let's play a little hot or cold. What do you say? Tennessee had 6 players invited to the NFL Combine. That is the most since 2 years ago when they had 7. There have been 329 players overall invited to the Combine, which will begin on Thursday, February the 27th, and will continue through March 1st. Now, I obviously think NFL Combines can be massively overrated. They can really be, nothing is a substitute for game tape. I'm sorry. I'm one of those guys that I think game tape outweighs everything. My philosophy on the Combine is you need to be able to prove that you can hit the bare minimum of certain physical tools necessary to be a good quarterback or be a good player in the league. But after you hit that bare minimum, I think you just got to plug in the game tape. And my evidence of that is Juwan Jennings, who, again, hit the bare minimum and has become one of the fan favorites in San Francisco because of the way he plays. So I'm not as high on the NFL Combine as a lot of people. I'm surprised that people still place so much value on it after, it should have lost its value after what happened with Tom Brady 25 years ago, and it's only increased interest since then, which is kind of hilarious and ironic. So I'm not totally high on it. However, getting invited does mean scouts are looking into you, and that's a good sign. So, Tennessee, being invited to the NFL Combine is a big deal. Or having 6 players invited, excuse me. And we're going to play hot or cold. The names are Dante Thornton, Brew McCoy, Dylan Sampson, James Pierce, Omar Norman Lott, Elijah Simmons. Those are, I believe that's the 6. McCoy, Thornton, Sampson, Pierce, Norman Lott, Elijah Simmons. We're going to play hot or cold over, this is specifically about what you guys think will happen at the NFL Combine with these players, okay? So I'm going to play a little bit of hot or cold here. And I want to first put up a poll question. Well, let's first play hot or cold with these guys, and then the guys that we're highest on will put in the poll question. So let's play hot or cold with players at the NFL Combine. Starting with Brew McCoy. Guys, I hate to say this, I'm cold on Brew McCoy. I think Brew McCoy is more of a gamer and didn't get the options as much to be a gamer last year because of the injury he was battling with. I think he's healthier now, but I think still he seems to have lost a step, and his lack of rhythm is going to hurt him at the Combine, and I think the speed is going to cost him. I see a Juwan Jennings style Combine where the speed turns a lot of teams away and they don't look at his leadership ability or anything like that. I think Brew McCoy is going to honestly struggle, and I'm sorry to say that, but I think he is. Dante Thornton Jr. Now, Thornton himself has battled injuries too, but I think he's fully healthy. Fully healthy, Dante Thornton is going to wow everybody at the NFL Combine. He can catch the ball. He's got good size. He's a speedster. He has the speed of a slot receiver, of a speedy scat back, but he can run routes well. I think Dante Thornton is going to blow people away at the NFL Combine, honestly. So I'm actually pretty hot on Dante Thornton. Dylan Sampson. All right, here's my hot take. I'm hot on Dylan Sampson at the NFL Combine. I think Dylan Sampson's going to run the ball very well. He's going to run the ball very effectively. And I think that he is going to impress a lot of scouts. I also think he's not going to showcase what makes him a great back, so he's still going to be undervalued after the NFL Combine, because one of the best parts about Sampson, the 2 things are his vision and his toughness. And you really can't put those on display at the Combine. And I mean, we're talking about a guy who fights for every single yard. And because of that, Dylan Sampson, honestly, is going to impress enough to get drafted, but still not get drafted as high as he should. So I'm actually hot on Dylan Sampson, but the Combine won't push how valuable he is. James Pierce Jr. Yeah, I'm hot on James Pierce Jr. I think his size may scare some people because he's a little bit undersized, but he's so ridiculously athletic. I think he's going to make up for that. So I'm hot on James Pierce Jr. The final 2 are defensive linemen, and they're kind of shocking to me. And we're going to name both of them first. Hot or cold, brought to you by City Heat and Air Conditioning.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
All right, welcome back. So our final 2, Omar Norman Lott and Elijah Simmons, 2 defensive linemen invited to the NFL Combine. I'm low on Omar Norman. I'm cold on Omar Norman Lott. I think Omar Norman Lott's a gamer. I love his game. I think in a pass rush, he knows leverage and things like that, but I don't think he's going to showcase his raw physical tools at the Combine to impress scouts. I'm not seeing you don't have a John Henderson or Albert Hainsworth who are just physical freaks and they're just going to impress everybody, which is what this is about. So I'm actually low on Omar Norman Lott. Elijah Simmons, I'm high on. Elijah Simmons is a physical freak in nature who just never actually got fully healthy to play in college, and then didn't play enough snaps when he was, and maybe doesn't have enough of a mean streak about him. But in terms of his actual physical stature, when fully healthy, which he is for this Combine, he will wow a lot of people who will want him as a potential nose tackle. May not work out because of his injury history, but this actual combine, I'm pretty high on Elijah Simmons. So I'm going to take the 4 biggest names from this combine, and I'm going to put them in a poll question. Who will impress the most at the NFL Combine? The biggest names from last year were Dylan Sampson, obviously, James Pierce, Brew McCoy, and then I'll say Thornton, Norman Lott, or Simmons. And you can pick one of those. Honestly, if I'm going through those, my pick, who's going to impress the most, is going to be James Pierce. I think James Pierce is going to impress the most at the NFL Combine. I think he has proven himself in a really big way. I think it's really hard to ignore what James Pierce has done and what he's been able to do. So I think because of that, I'm pretty big on James Pierce. But my second would honestly be, I'll just be honest with you guys. My second would be either Norman Lott, Simmons, or Thornton, because the truth of the matter is I think Thornton is going to impress, and I think Simmons is going to look really, 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 really good. So those are my takes. Sampson is going to be impressive too. Don't get me wrong. The 2 I'm coldest on are Brew McCoy and Omar Norman Lott. I don't see it with Brew McCoy, and it's not his fault. So I do really feel bad for him. But yeah, Simmons is going to Chris Campbell says Simmons has slept on. You're right. Simmons is going to blow people away with what he's able to do. I don't think people realize just how talented Simmons is. So that's going to be interesting to see how that all works out. Because again, Elijah Simmons is a very, very, very physically gifted player. He definitely has the most to gain from this combine. Put it that way. Elijah Simmons has the most to gain from this combine. Now, in terms of who has the most to lose, again, that's probably Omar Norman Lott, because the game film is what got him to the combine more than anything else. Brew McCoy, the game film didn't get him there. The physical stature and the physical abilities got him there, but the physical abilities didn't reveal themselves this past year. So I think people are already aware of his injury issues. So I think with that in mind, it's hard to just straight up outright say that Brew McCoy has the most to lose. I'm going to say Omar Norman Lott has the most to lose because I don't think he has the physical tools that match his game film. Dylan Sampson has a decent bit to lose too, because again, the physical tools, while impressive enough to get him drafted and get him drafted high because people will fall in love with them, they are not impressive enough to match his game film because his game film is so impressive. So I got to be honest, that's going to be a little bit tricky for Dylan Sampson in the combine. So we're just going to have to see how that all plays out. But James Pierce is going to blow people away. James Pierce is going to impress everybody. And so far, I'm not teasing it, but the poll question looks like it's agreeing with me. James Pierce is going to blow everybody away with his talent and what he's able to do. And I think it's pretty clear he's going to gain the most. And then his game film, honestly, wasn't as good this past year, but that's not fair because he was getting double and triple teamed and was used in different situations that didn't always help him. So I got to be honest. I think that, again, James Pierce is just way too talented to not have the best combine of anybody here. And the players with the most to lose are Sampson and Norman Lott, even though Sampson will still impress at the combine. Portions of the program are brought to you by Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. hdknoxville.com, hdknoxville.com. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break. When we come back, we're going to talk about college football playoff seeding. Yes, that's right. There's some news on that front that I'm not so sure people want to hear, but it's out there. So we're going to have to talk about it. College football playoff seeding coming up next. Stick with us. 2 minutes.
It's a new year, a new day, and Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln Knoxville.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beat. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Welcome back to the program. Caleb Calhoun, Off the Hook Sports here. Dave Hooker is out today. Should be back on Monday. Our poll question, who will impress the most at the NFL Combine? James Pierce does lead at 15%. 50. Dylan Sampson is second at 25%. Either Thornton, Norman Lott, or Simmons is at 19%, and Brew McCoy is at 6%. I've got Thornton or Simmons as possible options, which is why that's my second choice behind Pierce. Sampson is my third, and then McCoy is my fourth. I kind of agree with you on that. You guys on that, as much as it pains me to admit it. This day in Tennessee sports history brought to you by Joe Newbert Collision Center. For nearly 50 years, Newbert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. JoeNewbertCollision.com. That's JoeNeubertCollision. All is one word, .com. JoeNeubertCollision.com. On this day in Tennessee history, Tennessee basketball. I mean, again, I know I bring up the Jerry Green era a lot because it's kind of underrated how much success they had during that time that people just really didn't appreciate because they didn't appreciate Jerry Green. But Tennessee basketball shocked the 12th ranked Arkansas Razorbacks at home, 74-71. That was at the time their, I want to say, third win over a ranked school that year. This was a program that had at the time been on a very bad losing streak, had not made the NCAA tournament since 1989, Don DeVos last year. And most of the years between 89 and 98, they had losing records and didn't even make the NIT between Wade Houston and Kevin O'Neal. So they had some really dark years during that time. And Jerry Green's first year, they get to the NCAA tournament. This was their 16th win on the year, and it effectively clinched their bid to reach the NCAA tournament. It was a big upset at the time. They upset Arkansas 74-71 on this day in Tennessee basketball, or Tennessee Vols history. All right, let's talk a little college football playoff. And this is brought to you by Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake alignments, oil change, and more. Go to qualitytirepros.com or walk in and say Off the Hook sent you. Say, hey, Bo, Off the Hook sent me. Qualitytirepros.com. Pete Thamel of ESPN has joined the chorus of people saying that the seeding don't expect it to change for next season to the format of the college football playoff. Ahead of upcoming meetings about the CFP, Campbell was on the College Game Day podcast on ESPN involving Reese Davis, and he was asked if they're going to change the seeding. So for those of you who don't remember, the top 4 seeds went to the top 4 conference champions, period, end of story, nothing else. And it created a problem because certain teams got an easier path by not even getting a top 4 seed. And all 4 teams that got a first round bye lost. Yeah, that's what happened. So there were major issues all around with the way this thing played out. So some people clearly thought, myself included, I said this from the start, that the bye was not going to be worth fighting for because, one, you have to win an extra game if you're the SEC or the Big Ten to get that bye. I mean, I get the incentive for lower conferences, but that's it. So, but here's what Pete Thamel said. He said that he said unanimous approval could cost the others outside the Big Ten and the SEC some money, and I don't think they're going to risk that. So remember, guys, you need all the conferences to get involved on that. Well, Thamel says, for example, the Mountain West got a team in the top 4 in Boise State. Boise State got a bye. That's $4 million extra for the Mountain West. I'm not quoting Thamel here. I'm just saying what he said. So you get paid. It's same with the NCAA tournament. A conference gets a payout for every advancement into the college football playoff. So it's the same with the NCAA tournament. Like the NCAA tournament, I think it's like $2 million. So like, for every team you have in the first round of the NCAA tournament, you get $2 million. For every team you get in the second round of the NCAA tournament, you get another $2 million, and it keeps going. So you have an incentive for teams to advance. The same is true with the college football playoff. Every team in the first round, $4 million. Every team in the second round, another $4 million. By getting a first round bye, like Boise State did, they didn't just get $4 million. They got $8 million because technically for first round bye teams, you still get the $4 million for them making the first round of the college football playoff. So they're leaving money on the table if they agree to just the top 4 seeds get the top 4 byes, because we know the top 4 seeds are almost always going to be SEC and Big Ten teams with maybe one exception here and there. So with that in mind, they're not going to change the seeding next year. Thamel's quote is, the reason that the SEC and the Big Ten likely won't be able to get everybody to come along with them is money. So that is, unless they can find a needle thread there, I don't think there will be much change for 2025. Now, of course, the 2026 season could lead to many changes. The SEC and Big Ten could leverage their position. They could play a little bit of hardball. But this pretty much sets in stone that the seeding that we saw last year, the format that we saw last year for the college football playoff, is pretty much locked in. Now, you can hate it. You can dislike it, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but that's just where it is at this point. And I'm going to say bank on it. This is going to fuel more hardball negotiations by the SEC and the Big Ten, but also bank on it. It's going to alter how teams strategize their seasons next year.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions.
All right, our poll question, and I'm setting it up right now. Will the CFP seeding format incentivize teams to lose regular season games? Yes or no? And I'm just going to say it to you guys. Yes, it will, and it proved it last year. Penn State is very lucky that they lost the Big Ten title game to Oregon. What happened because Penn State lost the Big Ten title game to Oregon? Penn State got to play, I believe, SMU in the first round, and then they got to play Boise State in the second round. Meanwhile, Oregon, who won that title game, got a first round bye and then had to play Ohio State, who was on a mission to blow out everybody. The path helped Penn State. Guys, I told you this from the start. This was why Notre Dame outsmarted everybody. Notre Dame refused to join a conference even after they were told that this deal was made. And they said, we don't care. We'd rather take all the money for ourselves to make the playoff. And oh, by the way, yeah, we don't have to join. We can't get a first round bye, but we don't have to play a conference title game either. And this is the flaw you guys can't see. And I'm trying to insist this to you guys. If you're the SEC or the Big Ten, to get the first round bye is not really getting a first round bye. And the reason I say that is to get the first round bye, you actually have to try to win your conference championship game. So mathematically, you're playing an extra game anyway. Your extra game is either you end up in the same spot to get to the second round. To get to the second round, you either have to win the first round or win your conference championship game. You don't have to do both. So you can honestly just skip the conference championship game and say, you know what? I'd rather win a first round game probably at home than have to win this conference championship game on a neutral site and risk injury. This is the flaw with it. This is why the conference title games are going by the wayside. They are throwing it all away with the seeding. They weren't thinking what they were doing. And I'm just telling you guys, it's disastrous how it's playing out. I don't know if they didn't think this through. I think they did what they could to get the other smaller conferences on board. And but it's incentivizing teams losing games, which is so bad for the sport. This isn't college basketball where the seeding incentivizes load management, which I still maintain basketball programs should do that in college. It's not incentivizing load management in college football. It's incentivizing literally throwing the games. I mean, literally throwing the games, particularly if you're the second or the third team and you don't want to go to the conference title game. You'd rather just lose a game. Look, losing to Michigan helped Ohio State. They still got a home playoff game, and they didn't have to play in the Big Ten title game. Literally helped them, gave them a week off. This is the flaw in the whole scenario, okay? This is something that has to be addressed, guys. There's no way you can get around it. It's a real problem. And if it's not going to change, now that we have this format under our belt, what we saw in 2024, you're going to see teams do it a lot more in 2025. And then we don't know what's going to happen in 2026, because the other part is with 2026, if the SEC and the Big Ten are asking for automatic bids, that's still not going to change anything. This SEC championship, Big Ten championship thing is going to be a failure. The conference title value is dying for those schools. It's increasing for the ACC, the Mountain West, the Big 12, but how long are those conferences going to be involved in this whole scenario? I mean, could the SEC and Big Ten break off in 2026 if they don't get their way? It's certainly possible. So the seeding format is a massive failure. It's a bad look for the sport. It's going to be a bad look for the sport next year. And the college football playoff itself was a massive failure this year. I mean, you can't convince me otherwise. The ratings prove that. The ticket sales prove that. It didn't work. I told you guys it wasn't going to work. And I'm not trying to brag about how right I was, because, I never do that. I'm kidding, obviously. But look, it didn't work for a lot of reasons. One, the spreading out of the games over 2 weeks per round was just a disaster. Trying to work around the NFL schedule, which we knew was never going to work, and putting games right before Christmas and then games right on New Year's, because you want to protect New Year's as college football. I get that. But you're encouraging people to travel around Christmas and New Year's. People don't want to do those things. So all of that carries over into what happened with the college football playoff not working the way they wanted it to, and teams were rewarded for lower seeds. This was a big issue the whole time. And Steve Sullivan says it. This will be the last year of the conference championship game. Steve, here's the problem. I would like to agree with you, but these contracts that the SEC signed and the Big Ten signed with their networks require that they carry these conference championship games. And even more importantly, they require that those games generate a certain amount of ratings. What's actually going to happen is something Josh Pate talked about recently on his show, and what we've been reporting from Ross Dellinger and Yahoo. Once the SEC and Big Ten get their automatic bids, that's what they're going to jockey for in 2026. They want a minimum of 4 teams. There won't be a conference championship game that weekend. That game, the SEC title game, will be a play-in game between the 4th and the 5th team in the conference. It'll be a game where those 2 teams have to play to get in to the conference, to get into the college football playoff. That's how they're going to do this. That's how they're going to do this. That's the way to keep the ratings and the value, is those two teams are going to have to fight to get to the playoff. So I kind of agree that it's the last year of the conference championship game, but it's not the last year of the game itself. It's the last year that it is the game to determine the conference champion, because in a couple of years, just the top team in the conference will get the first round bye. That's how this is going to work. And I mean, look, I'm not a big fan of it. You don't have to be a big fan of it, but that's just the way it is. But also, this is kind of a natural outgrowth of mega conferences. We told you guys, I mean, that this is what to expect with mega conferences. You have massive scheduling imbalance. You have a 16-team conference with an 8-team schedule, and somebody's going to be the SEC champion because they played the easiest road, i.e. Texas would have been SEC champions last year without the conference championship game. I don't think Texas was a top 3 team in the SEC. I don't even think they belong in the college football playoff, quite honestly. They just played a really, really weak schedule by SEC standards, and that's something we have to talk about here. It's the same thing that Indiana did. The scheduling imbalance makes it so you can't really brag about the conference you're in to get a better seeding, because the truth of the matter is it matters who you play in the conference. That's the real big issue. So, look, there's a lot of problems here. Steve Sullivan says, I see a game like that going into 4 or 5 OTs. Yeah, the playing game between the 4 and the 5, I agree. I do. The problem with the auto bids, though, like that, the protected 4 spots, do they do it based on the standings in the conference or just the 4 highest ranked teams? Because, again, there's standings in the conference, but then there's non-conference games. Are we going to get rid of non-conference games? And by the way, not get rid of them, but devalue them? Are they all going to play just easy cupcakes? Which is a cheating of the fans, honestly. But then there comes the issue of schedule strength and the criteria they use for that. And the CFP last year did not use schedule strength at all in its formatting or in its selection. Otherwise, Indiana wouldn't have gotten in and SMU wouldn't have gotten in. And this is a problem. They're ignoring so many factors that I think are a problem. And they're not being consistent with it. I think they got to value schedule strength in this conference imbalance, not the conference you came from. Don't just default and say someone played in a tough conference. I think you've got to actually look at their overall strength of schedule. And you really got to hold it against teams for playing easier opponents. Now, I'm not going to hold it against Texas. The SEC gave them that schedule. They tried to schedule hard. They went to Michigan earlier in the year. It's not their fault. Michigan turned out to be awful. But these type of problems are going to keep occurring if this scheduling imbalance continues, and that's the real issue here. So as far as the poll question goes, will CFP seeding format incentivize teams to lose regular season games? And I guess when I say regular season, I am including the conference title in that, but 56% say yes, 44% say no. So people agree with me. Portions of the program are brought to you by National Fitness Center. Unmatched value, limitless options. Begin your fitness journey today. NFC1.com. NFC1.com. When we come back, we're going to talk a little Lady Vols and also the Alabama-Auburn series. A 1 versus 2 matchup between Alabama and Auburn, and it's not in football. It's in basketball. When does that happen? Yeah, I know, crazy, right? All right, well, stick with us 2 minutes. We're going to talk Lady Vols and Alabama-Auburn 1 versus 2 matchup coming up next. Again, broadcasting to you live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. Again, stick with us. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas. Your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing? Therapeutic? Absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7.
Welcome back to the program. Portions of it brought to you by Peak IV Hydration. Dropping the link in the chat right now. peakivhydration.com. That is peakivhydration.com. Excuse me. Sticking with this poll question, will CFP seeding in format incentivize teams to lose regular season games? It's about 50-50 now with 10 votes. 50% say yes, 50% say no. Timothy McGee with the super chat. Thanks, Timothy. Says when he said Heupel's offense is not creative, he says, quote, when I say Heupel's offense is not creative, I am talking about no slants, curls, jet sweeps, use more tight end for blocking and need to go under center. The actual play calling itself is probably not creative, and this is definitely a topic when Dave gets back. I think the adjustments he makes, I don't know if they're creative, but he's able to adjust to keep his offense dynamic. But you're right. I'm not so sure. I think the creative side oftentimes came from Alex Golish, so that is an issue. Stat of the day. Going to bring you the stat of the day here, and that is brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. RickTerryJewelry.com. That's RickTerryJewelry.com. And it leads into our next topic because the stat of the day is, and the Lady Vols went over Auburn Thursday night. Tennessee had 12 players register at least 3 minutes. 12 players register at least 3 minutes. 10 players register at least 13 minutes, and 9 register at least 15 minutes. But that's not the only part of the stat. They had 12 players register at least 3 minutes, and every single player who registered at least 3 minutes scored at least 1 bucket and had at least 1 rebound. That's how involved everybody got in the win over Auburn. That is what Kim Caldwell wants. That's the type of depth she wants, and it really revealed itself. And that leads to our next topic, which is the Tennessee Lady Vols rebound from their loss at LSU to beat the Auburn Tigers 99-61 Thursday night. They pretty much won it on 2 quarters, the second and the fourth quarter, which is where the depth really shows because they go so deep, which is what Kim Caldwell wants to do. Tennessee had 5 players score double figures, a 6th scored 9 points, and a 7th scored 8 points. The scoring was really spread out. Nobody scored more than 15 points. 17 points. Jewel Spear led the way with 17 point scoring. She was hot from 3, 5 of 8. This was one of those games where Tennessee just shot the ball well. They were 14 of 28 from 3 on the night. Jewel Spear was 5 of 8, 5 of 9 from the field. And Ruby Whitehorn had 15 points. She was 1 of 2 from 3, but dominated in the post, going 7 of 11. I'm sorry, 6 of 10 down low, 7 of 11 from the field overall. Z Spearman had 14 points. She hit 1 3, but was also dominant in the paint, going 5 of 7 in the paint, 6 of 8 overall from the field. And Talasia Cooper actually had an off night. She was 1 of 7 from 3, 4-15 from the field, but still managed 10 points because she can manufacture buckets. And then off the bench, Kanaya Boyd came in and in the post just hit all 4 of her field goal attempts. And plus went 3 of 4 from the free throw line. She was the best player on the bench. That gave her 11 points. She also had 3 assists, 3 rebounds. Samara Spencer had 9 points, but led the team in steals with 3. She was 3 of 5 from 3. Tennessee was 14 of 28. I think I said that from 3 on the night. They had 9 steals. They forced 21 turnovers. It was your classic Tennessee SEC win. Look, Auburn's not a good basketball team, The Tigers are 12-13 overall. Now they are 3-9 in the SEC. This is a team that Tennessee expected to beat, that they should have beaten, and that they needed to beat after what happened last week when they lost, or last Sunday when they lost to LSU. But again, they lost to LSU on the road. What's very clear about this team with the athleticism is they're extremely fun to watch. The depth is there, but they still are dependent on being able to shoot well from three. Now, that's going to be a staple of the Lady Vols, the entire Kim Caldwell era. What Kim Caldwell has to do, though, is get more elite shooters. Now, these shooters aren't bad if you play the transition game that they're playing and make sure they get open looks. They can have good nights and hit enough threes, which they do a lot of times. But they're not great shooters. So once you get into the half-court set, they don't have the size to win down low. And that they're never really going to have that because that's not what Kim Caldwell wants. They just want to be good enough down low. And the size is better than what she had at Marshall. So they want to be good enough to not get wrecked down low, but then they want to be able to torch you from three. And out of their half-court sets, they can't really do that because these players are all dependent on just being in rhythm. Not all of them, but mostly on just being in rhythm that day and getting enough open looks. And you get the open looks through athleticism and in transition. This is where her recruiting is going to be crucial. The players she gets coming in, and she has the #1 ranked recruiting class right now, they're athletic and they need to be able to shoot well. And I do believe they can. Once she gets enough, once she gets better shooters, she can afford to rely on this type of shooting because a couple of players may be off, but when one's off, somebody else is going to be on. It's the old Golden State Warriors method, which is they can't all be off shooting in a game. And that's going to be crucial for this. Right now, when they play teams like LSU or South Carolina, two things happen. They do get destroyed inside because those teams go out of their half-court sets, but also those teams are so disciplined that they're not going to turn the ball over enough for Tennessee to create enough transition buckets. Because of that, Tennessee has to score out of their half-court sets, and they do the best they can, but again, these players can't shoot out of half-court sets most of the time because they're not going to get as easy of looks. That's where Kim Caldwell needs to get these other players to come in who can do that, because then when teams slow the game down, the Lady Vols will have an option to be able to compete with that. That's actually the drawback. People talk about the size. The size is never going to be there. It just needs to be good enough. And now, again, last week against UConn, the Lady Vols did start scoring well out of their and playing well out of their half-court sets. I don't think there was any. It's kind of funny to say now. They were doing that. They were scoring out of their half-court sets because Gino Auriemma is a bad coach. Let's just keep it real. Gino Auriemma can't coach defense. He's not the greatest at coaching half-court sets. We're learning this now. He won his 11 titles because he had such a monopoly on recruiting. And recruiting in women's college basketball was everything. He is basically John Calipari. The only difference being players usually stay for 4 years in women's basketball. And so that gives you a huge advantage because they do have more experience. John Calipari rolls the ball out with a bunch of freshmen. But Gino Auriemma, they become sophomores, they become juniors, they become seniors, and they're dominant. So that's the really big thing with them. So I think Tennessee's path to winning in the future and winning a national title under Kim Caldwell is having more three-point shooters so they're not off and they don't have those off games given the system she runs. Others think they need the size to compete down low. I'm going to set that up as a poll question. What do the Lady Vols need to take the next step? Lady Vols need to take the next step. Size to compete with South Carolina and LSU down low. In post, or more elite three-point shooters. And you guys tell me. Now, I get you guys might just say size because theoretically that's how you win, but I think giving him Caldwell's system, I think they need more three-point shooters. That's where I'm kind of rolling on this. And as we talk about that, portions of the program, we call this water cooler chat when we're talking about this. And, sometimes water cooler chats can be hot tub chats. You ever like chatting in the hot tub? Well, if you do, then you want Dynasty Pools and Spas. The best spas right here in Athens. The best chemicals for your pool and spa right here in Athens. Stop by, mention Off the Hook Sports, and get a free Off the Hook Sports prize and $500 off. A quick message from Dynasty Pools and Spas, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the Lady Vols.
Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount. Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com.
All right, welcome back. So talking a little Lady Vols and the poll question: what do they need to do to take the next step? Do they need size to compete with South Carolina and LSU in the post, or do they need more elite three-point shooting? And I think it's more elite three-point shooting. I think Kim Caldwell sacrificed three-point shooting with the players she went in the all-season because she knew she needed at least the size to compete in the SEC, and basically took the chance that with the transition style she plays and their size and athleticism, they'll get enough good looks to have some good shooting days from three, which could make them effective. I think that was the plan she banked on. It has worked so far. But when you play those elite teams, man, they're either athletic enough to compete with you in transition, so you need better three-point shooters, or they don't turn the ball over as easily because they're very disciplined, so they force it into a half-court game, at which point you still need elite three-point shooters or the size. And that's kind of been the drawback with Kim Caldwell this year. But she's still got a great program. She's building something amazing, and I'm telling you guys, it's going to be exciting to watch what she's doing going forward. Portions of the program are brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia, daily updates, facebook.com/sports treasures TN, facebook.com/sports treasures TN. Also, before we get to our next topic, portions of the program are brought to you by Work Trucks. They're all about trucks, right place, right time. WorkTrucksLLC.com. Work Trucks, we're all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle. Now time is money. I meant to say Work Trucks. They're all about trucks. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down and has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is also quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for work trucks. Cargo vans, utility body trucks with the nap-hide work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Trucks supplies vehicles to people just like you and get you back on the road tomorrow. No dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks, and that's a fact. Service industry, remember Work Trucks. Work Trucks carries the trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks. Clinton Highway in Knoxville and in downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go online to worktrucksllc.com, worktrucksllc.com with an X. Why risk chancing your future and business on a wrong piece of equipment that burns your time? worktrucksllc.com. Work Trucks will also work to make sure you have the perfect vehicle you have to have. They'll even find a perfect truck, outfit it, and make sure it fits your needs to a T. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com, WorkTrucksLLC.com, proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. All right. Now let's talk about a little bit of history being made this weekend. Because on Saturday, Alabama and Auburn are going to face off in one of their most notable matchups in the history of both schools, and we're not talking football. What the H? Alabama and Auburn are going to face off on Saturday in men's basketball in a 1-2 matchup. That's right. Alabama and Auburn are going to face off in a 1-2 matchup. it's absolutely to see who's going to be number one this weekend. Now, Auburn, for those who don't know, maintained their number one ranking after losing to Florida last week at home. I actually think that was the right call. I've already criticized what happened to Tennessee when they dropped in the rankings, but I think it was the right call to keep Auburn at number one if you look at their overall resume, even though they lost at home. Alabama, meanwhile, is on a 7-game winning streak, 4 of those games having been on the road. Auburn's number one in the AP poll, Alabama's number 2 in the coaches poll. Auburn's number 1 in the AP poll, Alabama's number 2. Alabama's number 1 in the coaches poll, Auburn's number 2. This game is going to be for the consensus number 1. Now, they're the only 2 teams receiving votes in the coaches poll. Auburn and Alabama are receiving they're the only 2 teams receiving number 1 votes in the coaches poll. Auburn and Alabama are receiving receiving the most number 1 votes in the AP poll, but Florida is also getting 3 votes and Tennessee is getting 1, even though Tennessee's down at number 5 and Duke at number 3 is not getting any first place votes. The point of the matter is this is a 2 versus 1 matchup, even though it's not consistently the same 1 and same 2 on either side. They're both number 2 or number 1 in both polls. And the winner will be unanimous number 1 come Monday. This is history for SEC basketball. This has never happened. Not that SEC teams haven't played in 2 versus 1 matchups, but it hasn't been 2 SEC teams playing in 2 versus 1 matchups. Is this the biggest basketball game in the regular season ever involving an SEC team? And does this compete with Iron Bowl games? That's a question we have to ask, guys. Honestly, what are some games related to the SEC that compare to this magnitude in basketball? Or what are some Iron Bowl games that compare to this magnitude from football? Let me ask you this. I'm going to say this, and I'm closing this poll out because it's what do the Lady Vols need to do to take the next step. Size to compete with South Carolina and LSU in the post. 60% more elite 3-point shooters, 40%. I disagree with you guys. They need more elite 3-point shooters. But is Saturday's Alabama Auburn 1 versus 2 matchup a top 5 Bama? Okay, how about I'll say it this way: is Saturday's 1 versus 2 matchup a top 5 magnitude Alabama Auburn game in any sport in history? In history, in any sport. Okay, here, that's how we'll say. Yes, 1 versus 2 is huge. No. Iron Bowl CFP games always bigger. Iron Bowl always bigger in CFP. So that's the one. Those are the 2. Those are the 2. That's the best way I phrase it. If you guys think I should phrase it better, fine. That's fine. I'm just kind of saying this off the top of my head. And I want to know your thoughts. David Speak says, no, it's a good matchup. I think those Kentucky-Florida games were big in the 2000s and the 2010s were bigger. I could see that, and I'm already losing this pretty big. Everybody's voting that no, Iron Bowl always bigger in college football. Now, this doesn't compete with the 2013 Iron Bowl, where Alabama was number 1 and Auburn was number 4. And I still maintain the magnitude, not just the greatest spectacle in the history of the Iron Bowl, but the greatest spectacle in college football history was that game with everything on the line. And for those who question what was so great about the BCS, go back to that game. The 2013 Iron Bowl is the greatest game I've ever seen in college football history, and was the greatest spectacle I've ever seen in college football history. And the spectacle and the magnitude were only that great because the BCS existed. And I think we're all forgetting that. And so with that in mind, I personally, that's why I never wanted an expanded playoff ever. I wanted those games to mean something. It was just, you never had another sport with that type of history behind it. But so to me personally, that matchup, that 1-4 matchup was just incredible. The 1-6 matchup in 2017 where Auburn won 26-14, that had some magnitude behind it too, but not like that one. Not like that one. And I don't even think there's anything close, quite honestly. You guys can try to correct me. If in 1989, when Auburn and Alabama played, Alabama was undefeated that year, I believe, or they had one loss, but they were playing for a national title and to win the SEC title outright, and they lost to Auburn, which allowed Tennessee to capture a share of the national title. That was a big one too. And I'm talking just football right now. In 1974, Alabama was 2, Auburn was 7. Alabama won 17-13. That was the peak of the Bear Bryant years. That was definitely a big one. 71, Alabama was 3, Auburn was 5, and Alabama dominated 31-7. So again, some of these, I'm going to say no. I don't think this is as big as this will crack the top 5 of college football games because in the history of the Iron Bowl, largely because there's so much more magnitude in college football, so much more is on the line, and college basketball regular season is just not that big of a deal. And I think you guys are right to agree with me. An Iron Bowl is always bigger in college football, 86%, even though 14% are saying yes, 1-2 is huge. David Speaks says the kick six was the greatest regular season walk-off game. I'll go a step further, David. The kick six was the greatest college football game in history. I don't care what anybody says. I'll fight anybody to the death on that. And my issue with the expanded playoff is if that game existed now, nobody would remember it because both teams would be in the playoff anyway. And that's why I always hated it, is because I loved the old system where when you watched these games, it was with everything on the line. David, you're right. The Cam Newton Iron Bowl was epic. That was a good one too. I remember watching that one and feeling like you just kind of felt that Cam Newton was going to lead them back though. You just kind of felt that Alabama was going to screw this up, that like Auburn just, they were the national title team. That 24-0 lead didn't feel like a 24-0 lead. Now, I know this is a Tennessee site, but let's try to keep this objective. Is this Alabama-Auburn 1-2 matchup in basketball on Saturday bigger than the 2008 Tennessee versus Memphis 1-2 matchup? That's the next question I'm asking. They were both in-state matchups. They were both historic in nature. If you guys remember, that Tennessee-Memphis matchup stopped the college basketball world like never before. And I know they were in different conferences, but I mean, Tennessee went to Memphis. It was just so electric that night. So I'm going to ask this question. Which 1-2 matchup was bigger in college basketball? Was bigger in college basketball. Saturday's Alabama Auburn game, 2008 Tennessee Memphis. Yeah. And that's kind of debatable because even though this Alabama Auburn game technically means more, it's an SEC title, they're debating over who's 2 versus 1, whereas in that one, Tennessee was clearly number 2, Memphis was clearly number 1. It was the electricity of the feel of the 2008 Tennessee-Memphis game was absolutely huge. Memphis had been number 1 the whole year. Tennessee had just reached their highest ranking ever a week before by getting up to number 2. This was Bruce Pearl with Chris Lofton, Juwan Smith, Tyler Smith, J.P. Prince, Ramara Smith. I mean, Wayne Chisholm, the list goes on of players on that team that were really good. Jordan Howell. Tennessee was playing Memphis. They were number 2 with 2 losses. Memphis was number 1 and undefeated. And Tennessee went to the FedEx Forum and upset them 66-62 with Dick Vitale in the house. Priscilla Presley came down to watch that game. She came up to watch that game. Yes, Priscilla Presley was in the house to watch that game. It was a legendary moment. I think the electricity was greater for the Tennessee-Memphis game in basketball, even though I think this game is bigger overall, Alabama-Auburn, because it's an SEC game. I think the I think the Tennessee-Memphis game was a little bit bigger, and I think part of this, by the way, notable, Bruce Pearl was in both events, but I think part of this is the Bruce Pearl-Calipari rivalry, when they were both inside the state of Tennessee, is one of the most underrated rivalries in the history of college basketball. Okay, they both played to the media extremely well. It was a cultural debate between Tennessee and Memphis, just the cultures of Knoxville and Memphis. Bruce Pearl versus Sean Calipari, 2 Northeastern guys coming down and and embracing the state and embracing the entire cultural differences. And Bruce Pearl the year before saying no one respects us less than Memphis. The vitriol kind of rising from the previous years. A number one draft pick there with Derrick Rose. There was a lot going on, and so it was pretty impressive how that all played out. Unsung brings up a great point that one thing that is a little bit different is Auburn lost at home and didn't drop. It feels like they purposely didn't drop Auburn for it to be 1 versus 2. Well, yes, and you say Tennessee goes 2-0 last week and dropped a spot. Dropping Tennessee, I lit into the voters for doing that in the AP poll, but I don't think Auburn should have dropped. I think there's a case to be made that Auburn should have dropped. I get they lost at home, but like maybe they should have dropped below Alabama, which the coaches poll did. But you can't drop them below Duke. Duke lost. You could maybe drop them below Florida because Florida beat them, but Florida's got some bad losses on their resume. It looks weird to put them up at number 1. But I guess you could do that. But you do bring up a good point. So General Orson says, no, the fact that they both aren't only from the same state, but the same conference, I can't imagine many people outside of the state being excited. David says we're biased, so we're going to say Tennessee game plus we know the outcome. Well, yes, I mean the outcome does add to it. I'm just saying that it had a more electric feel. Let's see. Steve says they would never fudge the rankings for a 1 versus 2 matchup, and politicians care about you. That's a pretty good point, Steve. That's a great point. It's the same way they do seeding in the NCAA tournament. They set up the seeding to try to get the upsets they want to get. I mean, we all know that. Going to pause just for a quick message from Double D Piping, and we're going to continue this conversation in 1 second.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Welcome back. We got which 1 versus 2 matchup was bigger in college basketball. Saturday's Alabama-Auburn game, 2008 Tennessee-Memphis. 75% say 2008 Tennessee-Memphis, 25% say Saturday's Alabama-Auburn game. I mean, just on paper, it should be the Alabama-Auburn game. That's an SEC matchup. But yeah, I just remember the feel of that Tennessee-Memphis game. And I don't know if I'm biased because I was in Tennessee at the time, but like it was national. I mean, the excitement around that game. And I think it was just because Memphis had only been number 1 for a few weeks, but that was only the second time in history, their second run ever at number 1. Tennessee had never been number 1, and number 2 was their highest ranking. So it just was rare, but that rarity is also there for Alabama-Auburn. So I think part of the Tennessee-Memphis series was just also the Bruce Pearl, John Calipari publicity, the ability they both had to play to the media. There was Derrick Rose, a guy that was a scout's dream. It's just a lot of that went into it with the electricity feel. So I feel like that one was bigger. Now, the only one in college football that I remember had the same feel was, remember that 2011 LSU Alabama game that was 1 versus 2 that was 9-6 that turned out to be meaningless because Alabama was able to go to the national championship game anyway and just beat the brakes off LSU, partially because Les Miles, who had a vote in the Coaches Bowl, stupidly voted Alabama number 2 based on what he thought was number 2 rather than politic for his team and do what he should have done and put Oklahoma State at number 2. I mean, he literally said they wanted to play Alabama again and beat him. I can't believe they thought that. Alabama was obviously going to beat him the second time. But that one actually had a big feel, even though the game itself was boring. But I don't know. I think Tennessee-Memphis did have the bigger feel, but Alabama-Auburn should have. But I agree with you. The Iron Bowl in football is always going to be a bigger deal in that state, and that's just the way those things work. Portions of the program brought to you by the UPS store in Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. 10629 Hardin Valley Road, 10629 Hardin Valley Road. When we come back, we're going to close things off talking about Tennessee basketball as they face the Vanderbilt Commodores next. And there's something about Tennessee basketball that should finally allow them to breathe a little easy for the first time in SEC play. And I'm going to break down what that is in 2 minutes.
Like a blast from the past, the super dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is your Super Dealer, just in time for Truck Month. Save up to $5,350 on this new Ford F-150 XLT Hybrid, or save up to $7,000 on this new Ford Expedition. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Welcome back to the program. Caleb Calhoun here with Off the Hook Sports, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. I want to share something that you need to know. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used. I'm sure we all know people currently in the buying process, and honestly, they can all be a little picky. Say you want a Bronco, but you need someone to walk you through the options. Andy and Nick White have you covered. While you decide just what Bronco you're going to go with, you can have no doubt that you'll leave with a quality vehicle, because that's all they carry at Ted Russell Ford Lincoln on Kingston Pike and Parkside Drive. After one meeting, you can leave knowing that what you should expect for the vehicle or vehicles you want. Now, it's just a matter of making up your mind. And you won't believe this. Nick says if customers don't hear from him soon enough, to call his cell. That's what I call 5-star customer service, guys, with no pressure. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln on Kingston Pike and Parkside Drive. If you want to stop at lot after lot and waste precious time, that's an option. But why? Ted Russell Ford Lincoln has perfected the buying process. As for that Bronco, well, you may go for the Outer Banks model, you think. The good news is you have plenty of time to decide. With Ted Russell Ford Lincoln, you know they'll have whatever vehicle you decide upon on their lot. After all, they're East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer. Whether it's partnering with local businesses or sending someone home in their first car, Ted Russell Ford Lincoln loves to be a part of special moments in East Tennessee. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln views it as an honor to serve their friends and neighbors. That's why they're so committed to providing exceptional customer service. There's nothing better than driving off in the car of your dreams, and Ted Russell Ford Lincoln believes it's a pleasure to help people do just that every day. Do yourself a favor. If you want a fantastic vehicle at a great price and a smile on your face as you drive off the lot, stop by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln on Kingston Pike and Parkside Drive. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln, the exclusive vehicle provider and studio sponsor of Off the Hook Sports. All right. Tennessee basketball is coming off a loss to the Kentucky Wildcats, 75-64. They're ranked number 5. They dropped to number 5 after winning 2 quality games last week in the AP poll. Stayed at number 4 in the coaches poll. They'll probably drop again after suffering a sweep at the hands of Kentucky. But Tennessee fans, you should be celebrating about where the program is now, and this is why. They finally get a bit of a break. Here's a crazy stat for you. Tennessee has played 12 SEC games. 12, okay? 6 of them have been on the road. That's not the craziest stat. 9 of them have been against ranked teams. Every single one of them has either been against a ranked team or on the road against a team with a winning record that has at some point this year been in the top 25. Matter of fact, 3 of their games on the road have been against ranked teams by itself. I can just mention that. 2 of them top 5 teams, Florida and Auburn. Their schedule has been brutal. It's been the most brutal in SEC play to this point, and they still haven't played Alabama yet, and they got to play Texas A&M, and they got to play Ole Miss. But they finally get a break. This weekend, for the first time in SEC play, they're going to get a home game against an unranked team. They get Vanderbilt at home. Vanderbilt obviously beat them in Memorial Gym, one of the most impossible places to win. They beat them 76-75 back in January off a Chaz Lanier missed free throw. Tennessee, after playing Vanderbilt, will get a week off, a much-needed week's worth of rest. So they should be happy about that. However, they've got to be nervous. I think they're very relieved that they're getting a bit of a break. It's much needed, and everybody wants it. They need to recharge their batteries. Vanderbilt is only part of the break if you take the game seriously. And because of this break that they're excited about, I think they can very much overlook Vanderbilt. You need to beat Vanderbilt. You need to do what you need to do to beat Vanderbilt and then have your week off. Because if you just focus on your break before the Vanderbilt game tips off, they can upset you in Thompson-Boling Arena. I mean, this isn't a bad basketball team, Vanderbilt. They are 17-7 overall, 5-6 in the SEC. They're terrible on the road. I mean, they're just absolutely atrocious on the road. They just lost to Auburn, to be fair. But they haven't really played anybody close on the road to this point. So that's the one good sign for you if you're Tennessee. But, you know, Tennessee's so desperate for a break because of the mental beating they've taken, given their tough schedule, that you could very easily see them dropping the ball here if they're not careful. So I'm going to set up this poll question real quick, and I want to know what your thoughts are. What is your feeling about Tennessee's upcoming week-long break? Excited, much needed. Rest is much needed. Nervous, they could overlook Vandy. All right. You guys give me your thoughts on that. I think they are so General Ursus calls me out, says he thought I was going to say Tennessee should throw the game against Vandy. No, you shouldn't throw the games against home teams that are unranked, at home against teams unranked. No, you throw the games against top 5 teams that are probably going to beat you anyway when you're already an NCAA tournament team and it's too much of an effort and fight to try to win that game, i.e. they should have thrown the Auburn game and the Kentucky game. They wasted way too much energy trying to win both of those games, okay? Now, after the Vanderbilt game, Tennessee visits Texas A&M next Saturday. They visit LSU the following Wednesday. They host Alabama the following Saturday. They visit Ole Miss, a fringe top 25 team, and then they close the year off with South Carolina at home. With that loss to Kentucky, any hope of the SEC regular season title is likely done at this point. I mean, I don't know how they can get to, 18? We're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know how they could win it. They would have to hope that Auburn loses 5 of 6. Actually 6 of 7 since Auburn beat Tennessee, honestly. No, 5 of 6. Tennessee would have to win out and hope Auburn loses 5 of 6. And winning out is going to be difficult when you visit Texas A&M next week. However, getting the break when they get it is a really big deal. Texas A&M could end up being a quality win for Tennessee. That's a very well-timed break as they're getting set to face a very, very good team. But all of this comes down to having to get past Vanderbilt, because Vanderbilt can be a very, very dangerous team, guys. I'm dead serious on this. Vanderbilt is a team that they're not good on the road, but you don't want to you don't want to overlook it. David Speaks actually asked an interesting question, off topic, but favorite Maryland player: Alex Lynn, Steve Blake, Steve Francis, or Lonnie Baxter? David, my favorite Maryland player was Gravis Vasquez. I'm just going to tell you. But of those four, if you're going to make me choose, probably Steve Blake. But my favorite was actually Gravis Vasquez. He carried those Terps when Gary Williams' system had been figured out. And Gary Williams probably should have retired about 7 years before he did. But he did. But Gravis helped revive the four of his final 5 years. So it's Gravis. Timothy McGee, a super chat, says, you don't throw any game because you and Hooker are going to say, does Tennessee have a roster problem like you did earlier this week? Timothy, no. I did not criticize Tennessee for losing to Kentucky. Jimmy and Dave did, but they don't believe throwing games. I didn't. I didn't criticize Tennessee for how they lost to Kentucky. They shot a bad percentage from three. Kentucky shot a good percentage from three. That's how it happened. Rupp Arena is worth three three-pointers. 3 missed 3-pointers per team for the road team, and maybe one extra one for Kentucky. Tennessee lost by 11. That's a 12-point swing when Kentucky was having an on-day shooting and Tennessee was having an off-day. I don't think they're going to have that. If they have the exact same type of shooting game in the NCAA tournament, they'll win because the exact same type of shooting game won't have the Rupp Arena factor to take more away from it. Okay, so I think it's like home field advantage in the NFL. You give 3 points here, 3 points there. You give 3 threes. You give 1 3 to Kentucky when they're in Rupp Arena, and you take 3 away from the other team in Rupp Arena. That's a 12-point swing. So I don't really freak out about that, honestly, because Tennessee had it was just a bad shooting night. I don't think they need to panic over that. So I think they'll actually be fine overall. Now, as far as Vanderbilt goes, I don't think you throw the Vanderbilt game, guys. I'm like, that's one you take. I know we've talked about this, but when you have Vanderbilt at home and unranked team, those are the type of games you have to win. So we're going to talk a little bit about this more in a second, but first, a quick message from Ted Russell Ford.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American made. Ted Russell Ford is your Super Dealer, just in time for Truck Month. Save up to $5,350 on this new Ford F-150 XLT Hybrid, or save up to $7,000 on this new Ford Expedition. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford.
Welcome back to the program, brought to you by Banks & Jones, and live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Still talking about Tennessee Vanderbilt. The line thinks that Tennessee is not in any danger of this game, but in case you guys forgot, Tennessee was a double-digit favorite at home against Kentucky a few weeks ago, and Tennessee lost that game. So just to pull up the Tennessee Vanderbilt line right now, we're looking at, according to Vegas Insider, well, the line is not actually out yet. Okay, so we'll be fair on that. Now, honestly, I think the line's going to be pretty heavily in favor of Tennessee, but that doesn't mean they can take this game lightly. Not that Vanderbilt's that good of a team. They're not. But I do think that the line is, I do think that Tennessee has to take this seriously so they can win and go into their off week. Otherwise, there could be some issues. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. Live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. I want to thank you guys all for tuning in today. It was an epic, fun show. We covered a lot of topics. Again, thanks for rolling with me as I tried to fly solo here. Dave should be back Monday, but it was a lot of fun as it went. So with that, with Caleb Calhoun, thanks again, you all, for tuning in. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. You guys have a great weekend. We will see you Monday. And don't forget, hit like and subscribe, ring the bell, turn the notifications on, and tell a friend. Once again, for Caleb Calhoun, this has been a